up. So if anybody's joined us already, thank you very much for being here so nice and early on the Empower Hour show with myself, your host, Sukhi Wahiwala. Just give us a few moments and we shall be live. We're about a minute or so away and we're going to be on the episode. And here we go. I think we're going to hit live now. It's just booting up. There we are. Okay, so here we go. Episode 54 of the tremendously well-received Empower Hour show with myself, your host, Sukhi Wahiwala. This is the show when we take our time and we go through with universally amazing individuals who are so brilliant at their own in their genres and their fields of work. And what we do is we spend time to explain and show their journey through their life and how they've actually looked at going over adversity through each one of their challenges in life and proving that it's still possible. This is what the Empowerment Hour is all about. Today, we're not going to disappoint in any way. We have Humayun Hussain. Now, if you know Humayun, you'll know that he is quite a voice when it comes to food journalism. He's one of the UK's leading journalists in the Asian food sector and has worked in environments such as the Michelin star all the way through to the amazing startups. He helps individuals set up and rechange their actual menus to bring them to world class. He has all links with every single chef in the country. And I'm not joking, he is so well received on his Twitter handle, as he always does. And you'll also know him as one of the stars in the Kitchen, I think it was Kitchen Nightmares, and he was in that particular series as well. So without further ado, let me introduce Humayun Hussain.
Hi, Sukhi. How are you?
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. And I'm not joking.
Thanks very much.
I'm a little starstruck to have you on the show, but it's really wonderful.
It's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Complete.
Hello to all your listeners as well. Thank you very much for listening to me. And the good old Sukhi, the wonderful host. So yes, looking forward to
That's a first for me, isn't it? That's a first, being introduced myself as well. Well, wonderful. Thank you for that. By the way, Humayun's not used to being on that side of being interviewed. He's one of the world's, he's a forward critique and an actual journalist in the food arena. He's done hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews the other way around. So it's I suppose it's very natural if you've just noticed him to flip and say, and it's my host over here, Wahiwala. So this evening, what we're going to do is we're going to get lovely and close. We're going to go through our usual structure, and to be honest with myself, the Inspired Tribe and everybody else here, this episode is actually sponsored by salamradio.co.uk, and they're a Peterborough based radio station, Islamic radio station. And please, once, I think hopefully in the next week to 2 weeks, we'll be back on live for the radio as well. But this is a sponsored show by them. It's received across all continents of the globe because of our Inspired Tribe network. So thank you very much for following us and supporting us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please pop some comments in there and see how this you're going to enjoy this show. Please do keep this as a live showing on YouTube, so do be involved with that as much as you possibly can. Live show is on a Sukhi Wahiwala official content channel. So Humayun, I'm just going to touch base with yourself as well. Obviously, we all know you as the celebrity that you truly are, even though you don't like me calling you a celebrity, but the reality of life is that you're a very influential person in the food industry, and then specifically have assisted in bringing a different vibe and view to British Asian cuisine. But before we go there, I'm just going to touch a little bit about your background, if it's possible.
Sure.
Now, you aren't UK born, but would you like to share a little bit about your background, please?
Yes, no, I was born in Karachi, Pakistan, a very, very long time ago, ancient times, you might say. But yes, I was born there. My father died when I was 5, and then it was my elder brother and myself. And my mother, unfortunately, I was born into an English public school education, middle class sort of background. My father had a great love of food, but sadly things changed, circumstances changed for my mother, and we came here when I was very young. In fact, we came in 1972, and I was only, 6, 7, 8, sorry. And but didn't like it here, went back, but then things again didn't work out in Karachi for my mother, and then we came here in 75. And here we've, I've remained. So that's kind of roughly my background, childhood anyway.
Wonderful. So this is very encouraging, and also a testament to your mum, which
Indeed.
on an ethical basis, us as Asians to a nation, we've got this hierarchical scenario. I'd call it anti-G. And I hope you are fair and okay with me sharing like that.
Of course. No, no.
That's my heart speaking openly. So the reality is that, yes, of course, it really could have been, I mean, that is such an enormous feat to be here in the 70s, and also to be, if I may say, a single parent. So this is a great inspiration to everybody to see the success that you've achieved in your life. So just a question to yourself. You've moved from Karachi, you came here the first time in 72, didn't like it, went back, came back from Karachi, and then now you settled, in essence, in 1975 onwards, thereabouts, you said, in the UK. Where was that, in London?
It was in London. Funnily enough, with all my love of food and so on, it was actually in Southall. And little, I had no idea what a wondrous, what a fantastic place Southall is. It's such a great sort of place. But we were only there for a short while before moving to Putney, and from Putney, I recall going to Tooting, and then from Tooting went to Ealing, and here I am in Northwest London in Harrow now.
Wow.
So, but I bought my first house in Ealing, yes. So, and then now in Harrow.
Wonderful.
So yes, West and Northwest London, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely, homie. Out the massive there. Now I've got some people who are actually watching this in Pakistan as well, because we post out over into the country as well.
Fantastic.
And I've just literally had 3 journalists text me back, just for your reference. I think is one of the gentlemen who just came back and said, "Oh wow, you've got Humayun on. I follow him."
Oh, fantastic!
So,
that's very good.
We've got individuals from all over the globe listening, even from as far as Australia and South Pacific. Yeah. Good. So brilliant. So that's basically your journey up until there. So let's say, if I could just carve out a little bit, because it wasn't, in my understanding, it couldn't have all been a bed of roses, because that's what we were having a pre-conversation on. But
that's right.
What was your first journey into this current environment? I mean, was it straight into food, or was it somewhere else? And I can see beautifully your father had a love for food as well, which is obviously transpired and migrated onto yourself. But please.
That's right. That's right. Yes, my father. I mean, I suppose my earliest memories are of the khansamas, what they call them there in Karachi, and cooks. And my father was a great lover of food, all kinds of this, that, and the other. And those are my earliest memories, of all the great dishes and the omelets that he used to love, and how Halim would have the fresh ginger and chilies on the side plate, and goodness knows what. And sadly, though, he had heart disease, and he died at a time. I was 5, and my mother was in hospital at the time, and she was seriously ill. So it was a bizarre situation. Everybody said my mother wasn't going to survive, when in fact it was my father who passed away. So, which is odd, but that's life. So things changed after that. It became very difficult for my mother, in terms, particularly financially, and circumstances and so on. So gradually it was a case of let's leave the country. Came to the UK, and I was one of those people, even though I was very little, my father instilled a love of food, but also cinema in me. And I fell in love with American movies, not my own sort of Pakistani movies, even though I saw the odd sort of movie, but it was always, action and Clint Eastwood and this, that, and the other, And my earliest memory is of a very famous American film. It's a huge comedy, very famous. It's a mad world. That's what it's called. It's perfect. So anyway, but I kind of
just to confirm it, what was it called again? It's a mad.
Yeah, I think there's about 4 times they say mad, 4 or 5 times. It's mad world.
I'm going to look that up as soon as I.
Great comedy. Seriously, you got to look it up. And various action movies and so on. And I kind of knew I need to be in a world, and comics. My God, comics I was into, long before they became fashionable, Marvel and DC and my hero Superman, or my kind of my TV series Man from Uncle, I was great. Yeah. I want to be Napoleon Solo, not Ilya Kuryak and Napoleon Solo, that pistol that they had. I want that, it was great, watching all of that stuff. But I felt I wanted to be in a world where there's arts and entertainment. That was kind of my.
Just to clarify, 1 minute, you're telling me this is in Pakistan, right? So
this is in Pakistan, believe it or not. Yeah.
And obviously, Karachi is a very, very modern city, and being an ex-capital as well. So that makes a lot of that comes really. It comes like a bit of an alien conversation to myself, because I had that same love for comics and the Marvel hero and stuff. But you're saying in Pakistan, and at that era, that's just tremendous to hear.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was familiar with all the DC heroes, and not so much the Marvel heroes, the DC heroes. There's Green Lantern, or there's, I don't know, Wonder Woman, and there's this, and all of that kind of, and Batman. My God, Batman looks scary, and there's Little Robin, and all of that kind of stuff. I used to love all of that, and yeah, so it was that kind of background, and because of my English public school, I guess I was going to, until the time my mother couldn't afford to pay the fees, but fair enough. So I knew what to get into, roughly, and then gradually, I didn't know, what sort of industry. My first school job was a Kentucky Fried Chicken job, a Saturday job. I was stacking shelves for 1 week before I got fired from Tesco. Yes, I got fired from Tesco because I couldn't even stack shelves properly.
It
But my
wasn't your
first,
calling. It wasn't your calling. That's the
well,
reality.
there you go, there you go. And but oddly enough, I sort of always think of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Hey, there was a link somewhere, that I was supposed to end up in food, because my first proper job, and it was one of the, I have to. It was a learning curve, but also one of the worst experiences of my life, if you like. And
Wow.
during my A levels, I kind of decided to do my A levels private, part time, but
Mhm.
decided to work. And full time job as a kitchen porter at a very famous department store called Bentall's in Kingston. They actually used to be in Ealing as well, but they're only now in, as far as I know, in Kingston. And it was in the staff canteen, and everything I had to do, I had to kind of get all the stuff, the foods and supplies from the depot up in a lift, and clean tables, do the washing plates, big pots and pans. But the
Wow.
racist abuse that I got, I
Wow.
really, I will never forget. But by the same token, I will never forget the fact that there were two very good people there, the head chef, an English head chef, and there was this young chef who was his assistant. And they were very protective of me. They kind of said, look, just ignore all this, just ignore it. But the funny thing is, I knew I was better than this, my environment, and I kind of wanted to move out of it. And I remember very clearly, I went to the staff canteen manager. And I said, look, can I be, well, not promoted isn't the right word, but transferred. I want to leave. And he blocked it. He blocked it. He said I wasn't good enough. I can't even do my job properly here. So how can I move? I wanted to become a sales assistant.
Oh, so
What can
this is back in the 80s.
we're talking 81 here. We're talking
81.
81.
So
81.
again, the ambition within you couldn't have been curbed. So even that you had taken the journey into a staff canteen, and that was your first touch with food, in essence, after
That's
KFC,
right.
but you still made the effort and that inner grit to
Yes,
stand up and
because
get what you need to do.
you're
And then you
absolutely
faced,
right. Yeah, yeah. It was a case of, look, I can speak as any other person. Don't you dare put me down.
yeah.
And I can deal with people. I can deal with customers. I want to be a sales assistant because that was a better environment for me.
Mm.
And he refused. I left the job. I just resigned.
I was
And
going to say, but a lot of individuals, probably beg your pardon to interrupt there, but
no, no,
a lot of people would see this conversation because it's timed around the sad demise of George Floyd. But
that's right.
this
That's
is
right.
not, we're not bringing this up, and I clearly know, I'm just sharing for everybody here, the Inspire Tribe, we're not bringing this into conversation. And once you get to know Humayun, you'll understand how much of a socialist background he truly has. We're not bringing this up in conversation to get the brownie points to make it a part of a conversation, because that is so serious and such a valid movement. So this is genuinely the hardship that was faced by him in that time frame, and he's regularly spoken about it anyway. So I'm thanking you, Humayun, for really sharing this openly for everybody in the audience
Sure.
of Inspired
Sure.
Tribe globally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please continue. So you've been said you cannot. Okay, so you've just been told you cannot take that job. You're not good
That's
enough.
right. That's
You're
right.
not good enough. Now I know those words are probably resonating in your life even to today. So what did they
Yeah.
do to you? What did you do after that?
I just resigned, and I got myself a job at WH Smith's as a sales assistant. I remember in Ealing Broadway. It doesn't exist anymore, if I remember, in the book department, and did that for a while, and then kind of actually went back to school to complete my A levels.
Wow.
So I did that and then left. And again, I actually didn't, know exactly what I wanted. I knew what the world I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
And cutting a very long story short, I fell into journalism, and I fell into journalism not because I knew anything about journalism, because of my interests. So I just said to my local newspaper, "Can I write for you, Ealing Gazette?" I think which is still going strong to this day.
Wow.
And somehow I fell into it. I don't even now remember how I did it, but it was
Mm.
some local story, and I wasn't getting paid for it. But the key thing when you're starting out, you get published. Not so much that you need money. That obviously that's a given. But if you're not, at least get your byline. That's what they call byline. Your
Wow.
name in the article. So I got that, and then I started doing theatre reviews because I knew a bit about the arts and entertainment world. So I fell into a magazine called What's On. So, and as I was sort of mentioning to you in our kind of conversation, that I'm being given tickets, free entrance to all these big, huge theatre productions, and some
Wow.
of my big film stars that I saw as a kid right in front of me at Fifi, because you would get very good seats, if you're reviewing, and they're a few feet away on stage in front of you. Jack Lemmon, an old American actor.
Yes, and say we're talking West End, right?
We're talking West End with big, huge production. I mean, I would do very small production, what they call fringe theatre. I mean, I just laugh about it, don't get me wrong. But I remember one week in which I had to review 3 productions, and they were all to do with child abuse. Now, of course, a serious issue, but you had all these kind of moments. You're watching great big musicals on TV, on stage, to something that was very serious and dramatic. And so I was doing all of that. But then gradually, I can't remember who I was, different publications that I was getting published in, slowly. And I actually went to, believe it or not, during that time, not before, to City University, because City University is, in London, sorry. It's very good, for journalism and so on, very well known. And I took on a course there in journalism, but I actually realized, hang on, if I'm already being published and all these people around me, they're being taught about journalism, I think there's a difference. I don't need to be here. Whether I made the right decision or not, I just didn't. I thought, I'm already being published. Why would I want to do this course? I just left.
Wow.
And I'll tell you the key, if I may, the moment where I fell into food and restaurants, that right. And it's a very good friend of mine. She's my oldest friend in the UK, and this lady Amanda Bailey, my loveliest friend,
Yeah.
And she lives in the southwest of England. She was sitting at a dentist one day, and this gentleman walked in, and he was putting some magazines on reception. She just started chatting to him, etc. And one thing led to another, and she told him about me. And then what had happened was that basically I was given the editor's number, that could I possibly do restaurant reviews, for that magazine. It was called What Restaurant, the magazine.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the editor gave me a restaurant to go and review. Again, I wasn't going to get paid for it. Yeah, of course, a free meal for 2. And it was a restaurant, which it doesn't exist anymore. It was in Ealing Broadway. It was a restaurant stroke nightclub called Le Dodo, D-O-D-O. Very funny. It's just kind of environment. But here you are, you're being offered champagne. Not, I don't drink, but the lady I was with, she, I'm a Muslim. I don't, so I don't eat pork or drink. But it was just funny. My first experience, it was kind of amusing. And that was the catalyst. That was it. The editor obviously liked my writing because she started giving me more. And then I jumped off that magazine into other publications. And believe it or not, we're talking 1988, a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And
little question just to recap there, because because this is such an amazing rendition of your life. It's like it's like supercharged. I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for being so full, power packed and full on. But the question that resonates in my brain, and if I can just backtrack just a little bit for the tribe, the Empower Hour people, is that what was the shift between you actually working in theatre? So how did you get into theatre again? In
the magazine writing, the theatre reviews,
reviews.
You see, I always say to people, you've got to have a passion for something. You've got to have a love of something. And I was just, my whole thinking, I don't know whether it was due with my parents, whether it was due with the kind of education I had. And, I'm talking the English school, where I absorbed it. I absorbed the love of the world and entertainment. I absorbed the world of Western entertainment. I'm just talking about entertainment. And so I knew my stuff. I knew what films are opening and what, theater productions are opening. So, and later in my life, and this isn't something we discussed in the pre-conversation, I even dabbled in film producing, believe it or not, and dealt with a lot of big film producers here in this country. But another closed shop, by the way, and let's not go there yet.
You do, it's just like one of the things, just work out one day and start doing film producing.
Exactly. But you've got to have it's almost like you're having a hobby. And if you have a hobby about something, a passion about something, you will know enough to be able to say things about it, to be able to talk about it with passion. And that's what I had. That was kind of my secret.
I get that passion bit, but there's still massive amounts of skill. Now, I don't want my audience to think that basically you started in journalism school and then dropped out for any reason, because the fact was that you'd already kind of crafted your skill. Is that correct? Of writing?
If you like,
Is that right?
yes. Yeah, because here's what you need to do. Let's say if somebody wanted to write for a magazine, get about, I don't know, say 2-3 copies of that magazine, go to your local newsagent, look at it, look at the style of the writing, absorb it, learn how to, how you're writing, etc. And then mold your ideas. If you want to pitch for that magazine, if you want to write for it, mold your ideas that you think will fit in. That doesn't mean the editor is going to say yes. The number of rejection slips I've got, let's not go there. But that's how you do it. The style, the content, etc. And you judge and you say, I'm going to write for that publication. So you come up with some ideas and you pitch to the editor, the features editor, whoever it is. That's how you do it.
I can't say, and I'm not joking seriously, if the Inspired Tribe, if you're listening and watching this, you're getting it from a world-class individual who's in the journalist game, and he's told you his secrets of telling you specifically how to look at the magazine and feel the style and write toward that as well. And
you
then
need to know.
You need
to know the world you're entering. Otherwise, then it's going to be difficult for you. So
And the question to yourself, I mean, sometimes we have what we classify as in our life, we have a defining moment. Yeah, obviously you had a fun defining moment where Amanda Bailey assisted you to get into that first job. But do you ever find that you had any kind of defining moment that had such an impact on your life that it kind of either changed the trajectory or actually drove your inner ambition to achieve, to do, and to be the best?
I think it's a tricky one because things happen over a period of time. There are many moments where I felt this may to a degree possibly sound a little negative. There were certain opportunities which I didn't take up, that I have to say. That I didn't realize at the time that this could have led to something. But by the same token, one tries. I think one of the greatest moments, and they're more kind of recent as in, I would say a few years ago, when I decided to leave journalism and I decided to jump into the consulting side of things. Because I'd kind of had enough of journalism. I felt I'm chasing editors, I'm chasing fees, which aren't at the end of the day very big, even though I've kind of made a living out of it, freelancing and so on. But the world was changing. The whole world of journalism was changing as well. You had bloggers, you had people who kind of, were not doing it for money, but to get published. And sorry, please.
If I could just take you back a little bit, because that's kind of, I love that conversation. It's going to be really powerful to hear. But when you were talking about being in journalism itself, I mean, you were there, you had such brilliant experiences, because journalism in the last year, 2 years, you changed your directive, which is obviously where we'll discuss in a moment, if that's okay. But just to give people a little bit more of an insight into journalism as a whole, in the era that you worked through, through the, from what I understand, I remember it was the late 80s and the 90s. Correct. You also took a brilliant journey with, I think you also became a head of the Tandoori magazine and stuff like that. So
the editor. I was contributing for the magazine right from the start. I mean, funnily enough, I was offered the editor's job, declined it. Don't ask me why. People make decisions. And but I was writing around. I was seeing editors come and go, and then eventually I took the job as the editor. Oddly enough, many years later, because I was basically I was the most. Restaurants define me as Mr. Tandoori for some reason. Don't ask, but that they said because everybody knew the magazine. It was started by a gentleman called Iqbal Wahab, who started a very famous restaurant in London called Cinnamon Club, which still exists, of course.
Oh, very much so. I understand. So his name was Iqbal.
Iqbal Wahab, and he started Roast as well after, and it was him and Lord Karan Bilamoria, obviously the creator of Cobra Beer. So those two kind of. And so I was writing it right from when the magazine started in 1995, if I recall. So, and I was writing about everything. So restaurant owners kept seeing my name, chefs keep seeing my name, etc. But by the same token, I was writing for publications such as Restaurant Magazine, Catering, Hotel Keepers, then eventually Guardian, Financial Times, whatever, all of the, I was making appearances, small appearances on TV. I did a documentary called The Great Islam Documentary, I remember, on Channel 4. I did some radio, etc. So
Islam.
Sorry, it's actually called The Great Islam. It's about Islam, but the food is part of it, and it was shown on Channel 4 back in 2005. Yeah,
my era, The Great Islam.
So I was doing all of this, and then already being an editor. So that's how I became more well known within the South Asian, the Indian
Mm.
food and restaurant sector. So
That's
because I
where I
was
wanted
doing
to go
this.
because I think,
Mm,
sorry to disturb you there, but
no, no.
you kind of like, I think you've kind of under clarified what you've underestimated how important your input, I believe, that has been to the industry. And I know you're
Yes.
outspoken, but I have to say something. There in us in the UK. Okay, so we're in the UK. In the UK, principally, when you talk about historically 70s, 80s, 90s, even though the Indian food cuisine or the South Asian cuisine palette was evolved and everybody understood it, but everybody kind of just understood it as the curry. And I know that's one
Still
of your
do,
great,
sadly. Still do,
yeah.
sadly. It's something I feel very strongly about. But there we
But
go.
you changed. You did make an effort to change that, and I mean, there was a couple of things that I remember you would have posted, and you said something along the lines of, "Well, why don't just call it the name it is?"
Yeah,
So
that's right.
please, help us a little bit. The
I
struggle you
feel
had.
sure. I feel very, very passionate about it. I rant and rave on Twitter wherever I get the opportunity because I think it's a very colonial attitude that the English
Mm,
have still of Indian food. I mean, why is it that British food or French food or Italian food isn't defined as pasta or something else or fish and chips, whatever? Why do you call food from the subcontinent? I find it demeaning. I find it insulting that
mm,
you call it. Why can't you just say it's Indian food or it's food from the subcontinent or it's South Asian food? And then actually name the dish. Why this curry? Why is everything under this umbrella? And my saddest thing is not just the English, the community, the host community that does that, but
mm,
it is actually our own people as well who are not standing up against it. I'm sorry, I feel
mm.
strongly about that. Fight it.
Fine.
Respect food, respect your own culture, and tell the other person to respect it as well.
That's
This
beautiful.
is aloo keema, this is halim, this is, whatever it is, whatever dish, the millions of dishes that is in our culture, the
Mm,
fantastic regions in India, for God's sake, India is a big country, choose from it, all these different foods. In Pakistan, in, I don't know, Sri Lanka, or
Bangladesh.
wherever, Bangladesh, sorry, all these, I love Bangladeshi cooking, and I wish there was more authentic Bangladeshi restaurants out there that actually did their own food and not kind of, they mutated the cooking. I understand it for commercial reason, but still,
Mm.
I think this world, this our subcontinental cooking has a long way to go. We all say fantastic and so on, but it has a tremendous way to go. Respect your own culture, respect your own cuisine, and then you will respect your own culture.
This
And
is
tell the other person who is demeaning your cooking not to do it. Fight it.
this
Fight
is
it. Put them
this
in their place.
This is amazing. So I have always had this inner longing of understanding that, and you've aligned with it perfectly. It's not just a social issue. It's about basically demanding a respect for a cuisine, which is principally what
Absolutely.
you're asking for.
We're
And for
not in the
that,
days of the Raj. We're out of the days of the Raj a long
mm,
time ago. So, I kind of feel, well, make a stand for it,
I,
respect it. And
yeah,
yeah,
I think
sorry.
these days through your journalism and critique of this same and this mission and vision through your Twitter handle as well. I will say one thing though, that I personally have started to hear it a lot better. I've heard individuals from all British backgrounds, yeah, actually designating and actually identifying with the food properly. And I've started to hear it recently, and for which I'm sure you've got a part of it, whether you agree with it or admit it, it's not a problem. But I'm just going to share that from my humble heart. Something that I wanted to share, and I want just to point up to here as well, is that the food itself. You haven't just worked in Asian sector. You've
No.
been involved with the Michelin stars as well, right?
Well, I've been involved with reviewing because I had a 4-year tenure with the Guardian. They had a Saturday, well, still do a Saturday magazine called The Guide. And they
Mm.
used to just, small sets of reviews. And I had the brief for home counties. So I would go to all these posh Michelin starred restaurants, English, French, whatever, and kind of meet chefs and write about the food. And it's been a great education. I think I was saying to you in our pre-conversation, my late mother, unfortunately. She used to always say, when I used to work for, all these writing on food, etc. She used to kind of just be a little. She said, "Look, I don't really like what you do, etc." And because she was always be thinking of her husband, my father, that he died of eating too much. So I don't want you to go in that direction. And I would say, look, I agree with you. And she would even give me these little snippets. Don't finish everything on the plate. Leave some. Don't eat too much. It's quite funny. And you're having all this food that you never could have imagined in your life. How could you leave it? Let's put that aside. The point to me was always, I would say to my mother, I am not being fed in my belly only. I am being fed here as well in my brain.
Oh,
Like
wow.
restaurants give you a tremendous amount of knowledge. They tell you about different cultures. Forget the different ingredients. They tell you about design, the environment that you're in. You're looking around. The people that you're with, you can have good conversations with, because you're in this environment where there's a certain intimacy with your guest, whatever it is. You're getting spoiled rotten. I mean, put that aside. All these restaurants would spoil me. Okay, that's a different issue. But it's just that you had knowledge. Once you have knowledge of cuisine, you have knowledge of culture, you have knowledge of customs, you have knowledge of that society, of that background, of that kernel of another continent, another country, another place, where a million miles away somebody is living, and you're finding out about them through food.
You have just nailed it. My sentiments 100% in a humble way. You're so far ahead of the league with this thinking. I really thank you on behalf of the Inspire Tribe, because actually on many occasions we read in a la carte environments and also high-end restaurants, we sit there, we read the history around the dish itself, and it's endearing, it's enriching, it's inspiring. It's like at least it ignites you to find a bit better. You've just said it all in one go, and I'm just I'm in awe of that last statement. Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
I'm going to ask a bit of a slight different question, but I'm just going to take a little pause for a second. If you've just joined us, we are with one of the UK's leading food critics, who's worked with in Michelin star, is a member of the Guild of Food Writing. It's just, I can't even carry on with this accolade. Please, please, please do take the time to go back to the start of this particular episode and just watch and enjoy the pearls that have just been dropping left, right, and center around cuisine, around knowledge, around understanding, and around actually respect for your own and for other people's cultures as well. I mean, please, please, please just do that. We are with Humayun and Hussain, who is just one of the most, I think, one of the most lovely, humble individuals. Humayun, I'm just going to take you to a slightly different direction, because we weren't talking about where you are going kind of today. So you've done an awful lot of work, but before that, can we just touch on, if I may, you had an episode where, again, I said in the preamble, in the introduction, that you worked with Gordon Ramsay and you worked on Kitchen Nightmares. And
yes.
Which episode was this? It was in Nottingham, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. It was in 2007, and because I was editing Tandoori magazine, the production company that produces Kitchen Nightmares, they got in touch with me and said, we need an expert on Indian food for one of the programs. And it was a restaurant called the Curry Lounge, which Gordon Ramsay was, doing in that show. And, the format of the show is to basically improve the food and cooking of that restaurant. And I was being brought in as somebody who's an expert and who'll be able to talk about the food and where it's lacking and where it can be improved. So yes, I went up to Nottingham and met Gordon Ramsay. It's perfectly presentable and good to talk to, and so yeah, that evening was kind of fun. And it was very hot. I remember it was a summer's day, a bit like today, for example. And but yeah, it was good to meet the restaurant owner as well and just talk about the food with some level of knowledge, if you like. So yeah, and yeah, it was fun.
And that particular episode, I'm telling you honestly, we were watching it on television in those days. I know it's pretty hard to remember for the young gen who are following this, because we've got a following from 11 years up. They don't understand what television is. For them, it's like TVs, YouTube, and then all the streaming devices, right? Yes. But in those days, I can remember watching it, and I was watching with my wife, Pavinda, who's actually from Nottingham as well. And she recognized it. She recognized, she goes, oh, that's in town. That's in Square. That's in the Square. And I went, oh, right, we're going to have to go do that next time. That's right. So it was such a wonderful moment. Yeah. And to be, I think it was an inner pride for us to have not only an Indian restaurant, I'm using the word Indian restaurant just for the sake of it, but somebody who actually, on your behalf, actually knew what they were talking about when they actually did what I will call it a critique. But the reality was you were really, I think, inspiring because not only did he do the best dish that you've ever tasted, he also did a slightly dry chicken. I can remember.
Yes, yeah, that's right, that's right. Um, I mean, as I say, it was a fun experience, but in those days, I have to be, and this is without wishing to put any kind of a negative spin, it's actually very difficult to get a break for a non-white, non-English people to come on TV, because believe me, if I got on there, I could tell you of a number of other programs where, I wasn't allowed on.
Wow.
I remember there was a very famous BBC food series called The Food Program, if I remember correct. Food and Drink, I beg your pardon, on BBC Two.
I remember that as well. Yeah.
And I got in touch with them because that's what I did. I just out of the blue, because I sensed it in those days how unfair the system was. Why is it that everybody's white, English, they're able to talk about Indian food, and yet the Asians the Asians aren't able to even talk about their own food, let alone English food. It's called, I think, in this day and age, it's called cultural appropriation. I think that's what the term is these days.
It is exactly that, yes.
And I was very angry. And Food and Drink, oddly enough, they started talking to me, etc. But then the particular program where they were meant to have me on, they in the end decided, and this is no offense to anybody, and obviously she's one of the most well-known Asian people around, was Mira Sayal. So I was gutted that, if I'm not up against the English people, I'm up against, that's fine. That's understandable. At least they got a brown person on, so to speak. That's great. But even with the Gordon Ramsay program, the production company behind it, a very well food production company, did a lot of shows. And in those days, there was a show called Market Kitchen. They got me on, again, the producers of that, the Gordon Ramsay show, and to this other one, to talk about halal chocolate. Fair, that's fine. I'm pleased to talk about halal. What I don't appreciate, and this has been unfortunately an essence of my life, is being pigeonholed.
Yeah.
Because I'm brown, because I'm Asian, I'm only going to talk about Asian things or whatever it is. I know there are a lot of people who may be Asian and maybe they can't talk about English food, but then there are English people who can't talk about Asian food. Why are they better, more superior than somebody else? I was very angry that I'm being pigeonholed. I still feel angry about these things. Why am I Mr. some sort of they see a brown person and Mr. Curry? Well, no, I'm not.
No. I've got to say, honestly, this is actually quite a regular discussion about the cultural appropriation within our own family. My own daughter and my wife, they're very much in this advocacy of understanding of that. But this is no disrespect to anybody who has already taken what we call a positive journey towards understanding other cultures. So for everybody else, this is not attending to them. This is basically just having a bit of a conversation around status quo, in essence, around how an individual should be a particular stereotype. And I'm going to push a little bit more on this, if you don't mind, because you've been known to outspeak, to be outspoken.
I am very, I don't hold back.
And I had a beautiful discussion with you once where we're talking about the fact of BAME categorization, ethnicities and stuff. But this is no disrespect to anybody. This is just a point of view. Now, you had a beautiful view, a version which aligned beautifully with my wife as well. And it was around the fact that the sheer categorization itself is within itself intrinsically, or should I say unconsciously, racially slurred.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's a term that I've only recently, relatively recently come across. I mean, oddly enough, since the unfortunate death of George Floyd, the killing in the US, it's very sad. And what is happening in States, and has been happening for a number of years, has, funnily enough, somehow, piqued the conscience of a lot of people here in the UK as well, around the world, I dare say. I've had a certain organization, I won't mention their name, but they've approached me, well, look, how can we improve the condition and the treatment and how we deal with people who are members of BAME again, now, and I've had certain other individuals saying, literally extending their arm out and saying, look, how can we help people in the industry who are from that community? In
a sense of help them
help them kind of break into the industry. The food and hospitality industry, for example, people who are of the ethnic minority background. And I kind of felt, I have a very simple question, which I actually put on my Twitter. Where the hell were you before? Where were you before? You've suddenly woken up because it took a death. It took several deaths. Why this particular death? Why not all the people that have died and been killed in America or elsewhere? This is a major issue for me, and I feel, strongly about it, that why does it take so long for people to realize?
Yeah.
And just as an add-on, I'm going to say all the things that I'm saying about my early career. Things have improved. One can't deny that. Let's give credit where it's actually due.
Mm.
Things have changed, not hard enough, not as much as I would like them to.
Yeah.
And obviously there's competition of all kinds, so one has to kind of fight it. I've reinvented myself many a time. I was doing journalism, as I mentioned to you in our preamble, before
Mm.
that. I started doing a PR side of things, when I was doing journalism. So that was
Actually helping individuals. I mean, before we go into it, because I'm going to have a real deep conversation with you on that. So
sure.
the principle just referenced what you've just said was I think really, really powerful. And I think what we're really trying to, once somebody just shared recently a 1970s extract, a social media type extract of a school teacher, likening race and discrimination to things such as colors of the eyes, and said, well, how can a Caucasian light-skinned individual even understand as a child what they could be inflicting upon a third person when they get older? And I thought that was just so powerful. And then what happened is that through this particular experiment, just to give it a minute if I can, it's just basically they said that the blue-eyed individuals were superior and the brown-eyed individuals were not.
Yeah.
And then there were certain privileges taken away from
Yes.
those children. And by the way, if you reach out in the comments, I'll happily send the link in there or push it onto there if you want to find it on YouTube and send it as well. But they said that the blue eyes were superior, and then they flipped him the following day and said, actually, what happened is the brown eyes are superior, and I was only lying when I said that the blue eyes are superior. And actually, this what really, really got me personally is where a young, unassuming young lad who may have been about 6 or 7 years old had thick glasses on, and he had blue eyes. So the first day he had blue eyes and he was wearing his glasses and everything was fine. The next day he actually turned up in the morning without his glasses because thinking the blue eyes was relevant and it was still superior. I thought this kind of understanding is what we call unconscious, and you just touched on it earlier. So I want to touch this: the unconscious programming, which we're attempting to re-establish, and that's what you're talking about with reference to.
That's correct.
It's moved forward somewhat, and one of my previous brilliant guests as well is his name is Nick Haynes, who's a formidable individual from the Five Institute. He wrote a recent article saying that I have to admit, and he's Caucasian himself, and he said, I have to admit I am unconsciously racist because and as I learn my unconscious racism or my unconscious conflicts within there, I can delete them and I can move forward. He said these conversations are the ones who are bringing me forward, and he's a scholar in the same field like yourself. So wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that.
May I just touch on a subject there on when we're talking about race and so on? There's something I put out on Twitter recently, and I said, I can't remember the exact words of the tweet, but I said, it's not just about race discrimination I'm talking about. It's not just about race. It is also cultural discrimination. Now, I'll give you specific examples, whether it's me or somebody else. I've been told such and such is not, but you're okay, you're all right. And I'll tell you why they said that. Because I could speak English properly inverted commas, because I spoke like them, like white English people, whatever you want to call it. I have noticed over and over again the cultural discrimination. If you're, I don't know, let's take football for example, or I don't know, religion could be another example. If you have similar interests, then it's easy to be accepted. And that race issue, whilst it may still be there, the underlying issue, but it's not as pronounced as, say, cultural. Now, I'm sorry I'll go one step further. It can also apply to our communities. And what I'm talking about is looking inwards, being narrow-minded. You can only assimilate into another, and other cultures and other people if you mix and don't always look inwards. Don't be narrow-minded. Take the best from the other culture, take the best from the other society, always retain your own identity at the same time. Beautiful. That's what you do. Do not keep people out. Learn from them, but learn the best, not the worst.
That's right. And in the conversation that I had with you earlier, I was blown away when you said something which was so powerful, because there's a flip side to it. It's not just, you touched on it a moment, it's not just two polarized colors that are issuing with each other. It's actually internally, inside within ourselves, me being Sikh, you being Muslim, you being Bangladeshi, you being
exactly,
Pakistani, you being from India, etc., and Hindu. And wow, where's
appreciate the other. Look, I say this very openly. I may be Muslim, but I'm first and foremost a humanitarian. I see somebody, whether it's Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Jew, whatever, if somebody's in trouble, my instinct is to help that person. I'm not going to question that person's religion. For goodness sake, why would I? It's a human being in peril, in trouble. I've got to help that person.
And
I think that's crucial.
That's the key. That's where we need to go. But I was going to say something as well, just because it was a really poignant point that you made earlier on, and I want everybody to hear it in this. This is a power-packed interview. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. Thank you very much once again, Humayun.
Sure.
And one of the key points that I love having a conversation with yourself is about the fact that the Asian community, in essence, had a challenge with you. At the same time, it was like you were too British for the Asian community, and then you were too Asian for the British community. I mean, what was going on there?
I was always accused of having a posh accent, hence I wasn't like them. So that's what the Asian people would often kind of say to me. Now, and the English people would always, of course, see a brown person and somebody who's Asian and always thinks of curry and all the racism that I faced. We all did, I'm sure, at school, sometimes I talk about it on Twitter and sort of say, I think back and I can forget that I can remember their faces. I remember their voices as well, the school kids who kind of bullied me. And on the odd occasion, I punched back. Trust me, I punched back. But it's like, why did you do that? And if I saw them today, I would just walk up to them. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why? So racism, bullying, all of that was always there. One faced it at school and one faced it later on as well. But it is what it is, and you kind of, you basically say to world, you say you are what you are. And that comes with confidence. It comes with age. You are what you are. If you don't like me, even though you're the same culture, we're the same religion, I may have a slightly different upbringing from you or something, whatever it is, we're all different. Yeah. Don't discriminate against me.
And what I heard you say earlier on is the fact that don't discriminate against you, but you're also British. At the end of it, this is your home. This is your life. You love being here as well.
This is my home, but you know what? And this applies to a lot of us. The older you get, there is a saying out there that the more you want to go back. The connection that I have now with Pakistan, even though we talked about it, the year after my mother passed away here, when I was a carer, official carer, 9 years ago, the year after her death here, and she was never able to go back because she was more or less, as I said to you, in exile. I went back in 2012. She died in 2011. And it was such an emotional journey. It was, I keep quoting it, 10 days that shook my world, because it was like my mother has just died. I have come. She wanted to return, but her health failed and she couldn't. Now she's with me. And I was tracing all the steps, the hardships that she faced, the house that we lived in. Wow. And I felt a lot of pain. And yet I felt so much love for my own. I'm in Pakistan. These are my people. These are my cousins. These are people. There's those houses that were there when they looked so big. And this is the school that I went to. And that shop has gone. That hotel, my mother took me for iced coffee there. That has changed. Why isn't it? Or the restaurant that my mother would take me over there. I just walked in. I would be crying because I got so emotional. I said, let me just come in. You're not open at this time. Let me just walk in, please. I would say to the manager. I did some crazy things because I was so emotional. But I connect to Pakistan. I love the people. And when I used to be in the car, I used to see little children, when I went, and I used to say, this is me. This is me when I was a child. Or that my cousin, sorry, I'm getting emotional here.
No, it's absolutely fine.
My cousin Karachi, husband and wife are doctors, and she runs a very well-known charity in Karachi. And I went there, and
do share the name. It's fine to share the name. Yes.
There were all these ladies sitting there with little children, and I just fell in love with the children. I just wanted to hold them because I felt an emotional connection with them. I thought, are they not well? It's the charity center, it's all about education. It's about welfare. It's about, looking after them on a medicinal basis, their health and so on. It's oh God, now you got me.
No, no,
Mehboob
we'll,
something
yeah,
charity
we'll,
in
we'll pop it
Karachi.
into the link afterwards. No
In
problem.
Karachi, yeah. But
Okay.
I had a tremendous connection when I went there in 2012, and it is now even more. I have not, unfortunately, I was meant to go this year, and I haven't because of this COVID lockdown. But I may be British, I may be a British Pakistani, but I have a tremendous love for people
Mm.
from the subcontinent.
And so we should, and so we should. And I think
Absolutely, yeah,
and
yeah,
and I would definitely liken that because recently we went to Pakistan in October last
yeah,
year, well,
yeah,
2015, and for us as I haven't shared this very much in public, but our ancestral roots are from
yeah,
Daska Sialkot.
yeah.
So we've
Sialkot, did you say?
Sialkot, yes,
My
that's right.
God, my father did as well. They used to have sports shops there in Sialkot, property that we lost. My
Wow.
God, you mentioned Sialkot.
And
Oh
in the
my
19th,
God.
yeah, in
Isn't
Sialkot,
that where they used to make cricket bats or
cricket bat, number
something?
one in the world, number
Yeah,
one in the world,
yeah,
yeah.
that's right. That's right. My father used to, oh God, I didn't believe it.
Wonderful.
Oh,
And
wow.
this is and also in Lahore as well, in
Yeah, yeah,
Gwalmandi, in a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
location in Gwalmandi where where my father's my elders, my ancestral elders, my grandfathers, they were basically importing and exporting in the 30s from Lahore to
yeah,
UK and
yes,
UK
yes,
back to Lahore. So our
yeah,
connection with the UK was way
yeah,
back. They came
yeah,
over here in the 30s and
yeah,
stayed for decades and back
yeah.
and forth. So
I just, can I mention one small thing just when I was talking, because I didn't want to
please.
make it sound almost absurdly arrogant in some way or anything when I said, my own people. Look, it's very difficult to differentiate my personal sort of, because of my mother and how she went into exile, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
We were separated. We were separated from family, from extended family, because there was this anger there of
Mm.
what happened when my father died. So we
Yes.
were separated. I had no connection with relatives. She had no connection. We were separated. It was
Mm.
almost as though it's just me and my mother and my brother, and that was it.
Isolation.
And whatever problems you face, you internally kind of face them. So my mother went through a lot emotionally, as I did as well, but we were separated. It was almost, when I went in 2012, it was almost a reconnection with that. This is where I'm from. This is what I am.
Ancestral. Yeah.
This is my family, because we were so isolated. We were just
Wow.
totally isolated.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That means a lot to us as an audience listening, and for you to be so humble and open and honest with us all. Thank you so much,
No,
and
thank you
and
very
I
much.
appreciate this can be very much an emotional time, and I
It
think
is. It
it
is.
is, yeah. And but there's going to be the fact that you create that men's is what it's all about. So just, if I may just move it forward for yourself so that we can get into another space. The thought that I've got in my brain is the fact that you today, about 3 years ago, you took a slide change from your background because of the current flavor of journalism. Nothing to take away from that. You kind of worn that hat and achieved it. So you've gone into consultancy and assisting people. And one of my other actual guests, Lutfur Rehman, who actually owns the Mint Rooms in Bath and also Banduk in Bath and also Bristol. A brilliant concept that you assisted and grew with as well. So do you, I mean, just so I can ask a few questions about where you are today, you are now consulting at the highest level. Please talk a little bit more about what you're currently doing.
Yes, I consult with the restaurants, and I've actually now been doing it for a few years. I kind of parted with journalism some years ago, but I continued with Tandoori till 2015.
Mhm,
And in between, I was also helping restaurants. I was doing PR so I can promote, because I'm a member of the Guild of Food Writers. It's
mhm,
like I know food writers, I know critics, etc., etc. So I was doing all of that. But what I do now, consulting, is basically helping restaurants to, whether, for example, they want to develop a new concept. So somebody wants to open a new restaurant. What's the actual concept? So I'll advise them, is it commercial enough? Who's your target market? What sort of food do you need? What sort of chef do you need? What sort of menu do you need? How are you going to market it? What's your environment? What's your furnishings, your design, etc.? What sort of drinks menu are you going to have? Is it as current as what the market dictates,
wow.
depending on who you're trying to appeal to? But I can come in on a different level, whether somebody wants to change the menu. For example, I work with some of the UK's top Indian chefs. They know me, I know them. So I'll come in, I'll change the menu, I'll oversee the whole kind of how the chef will work for the restaurant owner. So I will ensure that the owner of the restaurant is at ease and happy with the end product. So
Mm.
I'll kind of oversee it, trial it,
I love it.
tastings, all of that kind of thing, you know,
So just
negotiate the fees, everything.
beg your pardon. So just to double check something. So if an audience member, an Inspired Tribe person, because I have a lot of restaurants who are my clients as well,
Sure.
and so if one of them, they wanted to refresh, because obviously we are now opening with God's gratitude. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we're going to be
That's
opening.
right. Yeah, it's been announced today. Yes, 4th of July. That's
4th
right.
of July, that's right. So
Yes.
within that space, would it be a good time for them to actually reach out to you to kind of reinvent something, just to
Yes,
bring a new
yes.
flavor to their organization, to their restaurant? And then would you be able to help them in that manner?
Yes, yes, I would, because look, you've been, shut down for a few months. There's all this competition between sort of all these delivery kitchens or what have you, and now they're having to effectively relaunch themselves. A lot of restaurants are, they've closed down, but there's also going to be a lot of competition now because they're all reopening. So I can help them, with PR, marketing, and just kind of announcing, hey, we're as good as we always were, but we're also even better. You always going to want to say that. So you need to shout, you need to tell the world, we're back in business.
Yeah.
And I'll assist with them.
And one of the things that I was leading to is obviously you also focus on their cuisine because of your expertise and excellence within writing,
That's
as
right.
in the Guild of Food Writing. So in the cuisine end, you mentioned something. You bring world-class chefs possibly to come in and consult with them and change their cuisine. Just give them
That's right.
new
Because see
menu.
what that's right. What you often find in Indian restaurants, it depends on the caliber. Let's say if it's a high street, mid-range sort of restaurant, the menu is what it is. It's very formulaic. And I'll come in and say, you see, I'm obviously aware that the last thing you want to do is alienate your customers. You don't want to do that. What you
No.
want to do is give it a twist, give it a fresh, approach with certain dishes that perhaps your competition, because always bear your competition in mind, that your competition is not doing. So how can you have the leading edge over your competition? Have certain dishes which are more interesting, your customers can't get anywhere else. And you say, let's put that in. And obviously your team of chefs will not be able to prepare them. So I'll bring in an expert chef. We'll change the menu, we'll teach and educate and train your team, change the menu, change whatever dishes, whether it's just specials or whether it's the a la carte menu, and then put it out, market it, PR it, and all of that. I can do the whole stream, basically, how you push yourself out there and, bring in bloggers, bring in whatever writers, change the menu. So it's the whole works. But I'll tell you just one quick thing. I love nothing more than setting up a new restaurant. That's my real joy.
Yes.
I love it.
And that's where I think, if I may share, we're probably going to cross paths as well, because the background I have within structure and business and bringing that to market, it'll be a great partnership, I think. In context of this, starting up a new restaurant, and I know you're on a concept. We're not going to talk about it because it's still growing. So we'll have you back when you want to talk about your next concept. Something that sits in my brain is, how can somebody get hold of you if they wanted to engage yourself? Obviously, they can always contact myself, and I'll introduce you without a doubt. But do you have like an email address they can contact?
Yes, I think that's the best way to get in touch with me. So I have an email address. That's right.
And
would you like me to give it up?
Yeah, please share it.
It's info@humayunhussain.com. I can spell my name if
you can spell.
So it's info@HUMAYUN Hassain, HUSSAIN.com. info@HumayunHussain, my full name.com.
Brilliant.
They can Google my name as well. There's tons of stuff on Google about me anyway. So
if anybody's out there who has been enlightened by the journey that we've been sharing today on the Empower Hour with Humayun Hussain and myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, please get in touch with him. Okay, I told you, Humayun, that we will rush. This will just disappear, and the power packedness of this whole and every single concept we've spoken has been an absolute delight to have you here. So I'm going to ask you, which brings us towards the end. I mean, this is kind of like, it's a very awakened tribe, and my audience tend to be individuals who are quite switched on with reference to esoterics, also themselves. That's, they're very present with oneself, and they're always open to education and learning, which is what you are, a hive of sharing. So at this particular point within the interview, we always love to ask, and first, I'd like to say thank you. It's been brilliant, mind-blowing, to be honest. But Humayun, this is a legacy question. So if I asked you a legacy, how would this epitaph read, to remember Humayun? How would that read? Would you share some words?
The actual epitaph would be just very simple, and it would be the man who tried hard but didn't try hard enough. So
Oh.
that would be the brief one.
Truly,
But
you know, even there you're making a joke out of it, but that's so hard hitting. It's so spot on. We all
um,
try to be the hardest.
so yes, but I'd also like to think that I'll be remembered
Mm.
as the person who contributed and inspired many to make the UK South Asian restaurant scene better than it ever was.
Oh wow.
Period.
And I must add something to that. So I think that's an absolute given, that actually bringing the defragging and bringing up the names and actually getting the justice to a cuisine in specific South Asian at the moment also must be added to that as well somewhere along the line. Humayun,
Yes,
it's been.
that's right.
You know, are there any last few words you want to share with anybody here?
Just, try as hard as you can, never be put down or let down by people. If you have the drive,
Mm.
get the knowledge, but if you have the drive, more than anything, you need that. Keep moving forward. The more you put you down, the more you will need to or
Get up
want
there.
to get
Get up
up
there.
and fight. And
Wow.
by the way, I'm starting a concept in Delivery Kitchen. If anybody wants to invest, email me.
Well, you've already got the
Very
email,
commercial
everybody.
concept.
Yeah, we've all got the email at the moment. It may even be myself as
That would
well.
be
So I
wonderful.
don't know. You know, honestly, Humayun, I have to say, on a personal level, I really, really, we take a lot of time and effort to select the right guest, world-class individuals. And today you truly have been one of those world-class individuals who has absolutely lifted the consciousness and knowledge of our audience today. And I want to thank you on behalf of us, the Inspired Tribe and the Empower Our Show, and myself, Sukhi Wahiwala. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the listeners for listening to me babble on. Thank you.
It's a brilliant babble. Thank you very much. We will have you
Thank you.
back for round two. I'm telling you that now.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you. And so just everybody else who's following today, thank you very much for staying towards the end. You know, the end always empowers the individual with some real personal hand-me-down informations that are actually impactful in your life. And I hope, please do put the comments down and let us know what really touched you, what really connected with you in this interview. And in the same token, what you didn't agree with, what you did disagree with maybe, which is absolutely a God-given right. The Empower Hour show is here to create the change and empower the next generation. And I sincerely hope I see you next week on Tuesday. And it's always going to be between the hours of 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the evening. Once again, on behalf of Mayan and myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, thank you for being a part of this episode. See you in episode 55 next week.
Bye-bye.